Light drops of rain were falling on the ground. The sky was covered with clouds, and small pools of mud and water had formed on the city streets. Under the broken shed of an old building, a thin and delicate 8-year-old girl was sitting with her 1-year-old brother in her arms. Her clothes were torn and old. She didn't even have slippers on her feet, and the mixed effect of dirt and tears was clearly visible on her face. The younger brother was crying on her chest, his face turning yellow with hunger. Zainab. That was the name of this girl. Her eyes were filled with everything that perhaps no one could endure in a lifetime. Just a year ago, both her parents had passed away in a terrible car accident. The accident was so terrible that Zainab's screams still echoed in her ears. That moment when she was trying to hold her mother's hand, but that hand, covered in blood, had slowly slipped from her grasp forever. After their parents left, Zainab and her younger brother Kashif stayed with relatives for a few days, but their faces soon changed. Their property, house, and everything was taken away. Zainab and her brother were on the streets. Now every day was a war for them. A war for food, a war for a place to sleep, a war for survival. That day, Kashif's hunger had increased to the limit. Zainab didn't have a single rupee with her. She wandered the streets, sometimes reaching out to someone, sometimes peeking into garbage cans. But today, fate seemed to have turned against her. She was constantly trying to silence her brother, but Kashif's weak screams and sobs were cutting her heart. Finally, Zainab made a decision. There was a bright and beautiful store in front. Behind its large glass window, milk bottles were lined up. Zainab pushed her brother into a corner near the bushes and entered the store. Her heart was beating fast, her hands were shaking. She walked slowly to the rack where the milk was kept. She picked up a small bottle and began to hide it in her blanket. At that moment a deep, strong voice rang in her ears. "What are you doing?" Zainab's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and saw a tall, neatly dressed 28-year-old man standing there. There was surprise and hardness in his eyes, but also a strange calm on his face. He had a shopping bag in his hand, and he was looking at Zainab intently. Zainab's lips trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Hey, I didn't want to steal. Just, my brother. He's going to die of hunger. He hasn't had milk for 3 days. What should I do?" Her voice trailed off into sobs. The man slowly approached her. He took the bottle from her hand, placed the money on the counter, and then said softly, "Come. Show me where your brother is." Zainab led him out with shaky steps and showed him to Kashif. The little boy was shivering from cold and hunger. The man watched the scene for a while, then slowly said, "You are not alone now. I am the support for both of you. I will breastfeed your brother, I will raise you." He made them both sit in the car with him. Zainab's tears were not stopping. She felt as if someone had held her hand after years. But Zainab did not know that the journey ahead would not be easy, because this man's house was full of people who hated her more than they loved her. And her real test was about to begin now. The car was moving slowly in the light rain. Zainab was sitting in the back seat, hugging her brother Kashif. Kashif had calmed down a bit after drinking the milk, but there was still fear in Zainab's eyes. She didn't know who this man was, where he was taking her, and what was going to happen next. The car stopped in front of a large, magnificent white bungalow. Zainab widened her eyes and looked around the bungalow. High walls, a guard at the gate, and windows sparkling with light, as if she had come to a dream. But there was a strange uneasiness in her heart. The man, whose name she later learned was Ahmed, approached Zainab and said softly, "This is my house. You two will live here, you will lack for nothing." Zainab hesitantly nodded and slowly stepped inside the gate. But as soon as she entered, a hoarse voice rang out. "Who is this Ahmed?" It was Ahmed's older sister, Fariha. Her eyes were like lightning striking Zainab. Tall, stern, and a glint of contempt in her eyes. She quickly approached Ahmed and said angrily, "What are this orphan girl and her child doing here? You have opened a charity house." Ahmed replied seriously, This girl and her brother will live in my house from today. Fariha's face turned red. Have you gone mad? These people are outsiders. They have neither father nor mother. What will people say? And I will not be their maid. Zainab was shocked to hear this. She hugged her brother even tighter. Ahmed placed his hand on Zainab's head, as if encouraging her, but there was also a hint of worry in his eyes. After a while, Ahmed took Zainab to a small but clean room and said, "This is your room. Rest, everything will be fine." Zainab bit her lip and nodded slowly, but she knew in her heart that nothing was going to be easy. The night had fallen. Zainab was lullabying to her brother when suddenly the door burst open. Fariha came in, an old blanket in her hand. She threw the blanket at Zainab and said sharply, "This is not a hotel. Get up early in the morning, wash the dishes, sweep, and don't let your brother cry here and there. Otherwise I will throw both of them on the road." Tears got stuck in Zainab's throat. She wanted to say something, but Kashif's sleep was broken and he started crying again. Fariha said angrily, "If this child disturbs my sleep, it won't be good for both of you." Zainab quickly took her brother in her arms and lovingly quieted him. As soon as Fariha left the room, Zainab lost control. She sat on the ground and started crying. Holding Kashif to her chest, she was slowly saying, "I thought our troubles would be over now. But perhaps our real ordeal has just begun." Ahmed was standing silently outside the room door, listening to all this. And there was a strange sadness and helplessness on his face. The first rays of dawn had not yet fully set on the ground when Zainab opened her eyes. Her eyes were red from staying up all night, but Fariha's voice pierced her ears. "Get up. The sun doesn't rise for you. Wash the dishes, sweep the floor, and yes, you will make breakfast too." Zainab wrapped Kashif in a blanket with a heavy body from sleep and went to the kitchen. Her hands were blistered, but she quietly began to wash the dishes. Fariha came into the kitchen and said with a mocking smile, "Hurry up, we can't tolerate lazy maids." Zainab lowered her eyes and clenched her hands. But then she heard Kashif crying. She ran from the kitchen to the living room and saw that Kashif had come out of the blanket hanging on the floor and was shivering with cold. Zainab immediately picked him up and held him to her chest and said softly, "It's me. Don't cry." Seeing this scene, Fariha became furious. "Why did you leave work and run after this child? Did you come to run the house or to have fun with the child in your arms?" Zainab said, crying, "He is very small, he is crying from hunger." Fariha waved her hand and said, "This is not my problem. Shut him up and come and finish the work." When Ahmed came home in the afternoon, Zainab thought she might give her brother some milk. She slowly approached Ahmed's room, but the door was closed. His soft voice was coming from inside on the phone. Zainab plucked up the courage and knocked lightly on the door. "Who?" Ahmed's serious voice came. Zainab. Kashif needs milk." There was silence for a few moments. Then Ahmed opened the door and said, "Come in." Ahmed filled the bottle with milk and gave it to Zainab. "Give Kashif a drink. And don't worry, I'm with you." Zainab smiled for the first time and thanked him. But at that moment, the burning hatred in Fariha's eyes, who was standing near the door of the room, deepened even more. At night, when everyone was asleep, Fariha slowly came to Zainab's room. She had Kashif's bottle of milk in her hand. She opened the bottle cap, spilled the milk on the ground, and put the empty bottle back. Then she whispered, "Tomorrow you will see what hunger is." Zainab remained silent after hearing this. She knew that Kashif would cry again tomorrow, and she would not be able to do anything. Tears started to fall from her eyes. She kept awake all night with her brother in her arms. And looking up at the sky, she kept praying only one prayer. "Allah, may my brother be safe." It was morning, but Zainab's night had passed without sleep. Kashif's hunger had taken away her innocent laughter. He cried all night and Zainab kept rocking him in her arms, but what would happen in the empty bottle? When the sun came out, Kashif's crying voice became weaker. He was now only making soft sobs. Zainab's heart was trembling with fear. She immediately looked for Ahmed, but he had left the house early in the morning for work. Zainab gathered her courage and went to the kitchen, but Fariha was standing there. "What do you want?" Fariha asked sharply. "Milk for Kashif," Zainab said softly. Fariha laughed. "I fed him yesterday. If I feed him every day, will this baby become a prince?" Tears filled Zainab's eyes. "He is very small. If he doesn't drink milk, he will die," Fariha said in a stern tone. "If he dies, what will happen to me? And if you argue with me, I will throw you both out of the house right now." Zainab's hands started shaking, but she knew that she had to do something to save her brother. She left the kitchen and headed towards the gate. Walking on the muddy road after the rain outside, she went straight to the nearest shop. "Brother, give me a bottle of milk. I will bring the money later." The shopkeeper looked her up and down and said in a stern tone, "There is no loan here. Go make a fool of someone else." Zainab's heart broke. She started walking back slowly, but then a motorcycle came and stopped near her. Two young men were sitting. Both of them had strange looks. One said, "Little girl, if you want milk, come with us, we will give you milk and money too." A wave of fear ran through Zainab's heart. She ran back to the bungalow with quick steps. Upon reaching home, she went straight to her room and started crying, taking Kashif in her arms. Evening was falling. Kashif's breathing was getting heavy. His eyesight was getting dim. Zainab soaked a small piece of cloth in water and wet his lips, but it made no difference. That moment Ahmed came home. As soon as he entered the room, his color faded on seeing Kashif in this state. "What happened?" he said in panic. Zainab started crying. "I told you to give me milk, but no one gave it. Brother, Ahmed, brother will die." Without wasting a moment, Ahmed filled a bottle with milk and fed Kashif, but the child was so weak that he fainted after taking just 2 sips. Ahmed immediately took the car and took both of them to the hospital. In the emergency room, the doctor looked at Ahmed and said, "If you had been 10 minutes late, this baby wouldn't have survived." Zainab's tears wouldn't stop. She took Kashif's small hand in hers and made a decision in her heart. "No matter what, I will never let my brother starve to death again." Outside in the hospital corridor, Fariha was standing, and there was not regret on her face, but a dangerous smile, as if this story was about to get even more bitter. Kashif's condition had improved upon his return from the hospital, but Zainab's heart was still afraid. She would hold her brother close to her chest at all times, as if a slight negligence would bring him to the brink of death again. Ahmed decided after that day that he would bring Kashif's milk and everything he needed to eat and drink himself. But his presence in Ahmed's house was not possible all the time, and this was the opportunity that Fariha needed. One evening Ahmed went out on some urgent business. There was silence in the house, but behind this silence, a storm was hidden. Fariha slowly came to Zainab's room. She had an expensive bangle and a bundle of notes in her hand. She smiled and approached Zainab and said, "Looking at this bangle and this money, if you take this, you and your brother will have food and drink for the rest of your life." Zainab asked in surprise, "But in return for this?" Fariha's smile deepened. "All I have to do in return is take this money out of Ahmed's closet tomorrow morning and put it in my bag. I'll take care of the rest." Zainab stepped back. This would be theft." Fariha's tone hardened. "Yes, and you have to do this theft so that I can tell Ahmed that you are a thief." Zainab's heart sank. "But why are you doing this?" Fariha said with a venomous smile. "Because you and your crying brother are like thorns in this house. You have to get out of here." Zainab said in a strong tone. "I won't do this. No matter what happens, I won't become a thief." Fariha laughed and said, "Okay. Then see, I can get you out of the house without accusing you of theft." The next morning, immediately after Ahmed left, Fariha made her move. She took the money out of Ahmed's closet and hid it in Zainab's room, shouting and calling out to the servants, Everyone come. This orphan girl has stolen Ahmed's money. The servants and the people around gathered. There was fear and helplessness in Zainab's eyes. She was saying over and over again, "I didn't do anything. This is a lie." But no one believed her. Fariha took the money out of the room and waved it in front of everyone. "See, I used to say this is a thief." Zainab started crying, holding Kashif in her arms. "I swear I didn't take this money." That moment Ahmed came home. Seeing the scene, he was shocked. Fariha immediately said in his ear, "Look, Ahmed, the one you gave a place to in the house is the one who is cheating on you." Ahmed looked at Zainab. There was a storm of doubt and confusion in his eyes. Zainab said in a trembling voice, "Ahmed, brother, believe me, I didn't do anything." But Ahmed remained silent. And this silence felt like a wound on Zainab's heart. The hall of the house was plunged into silence. Fariha stood triumphantly on one side and looked at Ahmed with Zainab Kashif in her arms, tears in her eyes and helplessness on her face. A storm was raging in Ahmed's heart. He knew that Zainab did not lie, but everyone was testifying in front of him. The money was found in her room, and the circumstances were against him. "Zainab," Ahmed said softly, "I don't want to doubt you, but this all seems very wrong." A ray of hope appeared in Zainab's eyes. "Ahmed, brother, I swear, Fariha Baji did all this." Fariha immediately said, Yes, blame me. But this money came out of his room. This is the truth in front of everyone." The servants started whispering, "He is an orphan, he must have become greedy for money. Where can such people be loyal?" Zainab said in a trembling voice, "I can't steal. He is my brother, everything is mine. I can't feed him forbidden food." Ahmed took a deep breath. "Zainab, I need time to think. For now, you two leave here." This sentence struck Zainab like a dagger in her heart. She had thought that Ahmed would always be her support, but today he too lost faith in it. Zainab slowly wrapped her brother in a sheet, put on old shoes and walked towards the door. A smile spread across Fariha's face, as if she had achieved her greatest victory. It was raining. Zainab walked out of the gate step by step. Her feet were sinking in the mud, but she did not stop. She was wandering on the wet streets of the city. Kashif was getting wet from the rain, but Zainab had neither an umbrella nor a place to take shelter. She asked for help from every face, but no one stopped. The night grew dark. Zainab sat under the shed of an old bus stop. The cold winter wind was biting Kashif's innocent face. Zainab hugged her brother to her chest and said in a trembling voice, "Allah, just do a miracle. This time someone will believe me." A car's brakes were heard from afar. The headlights fell directly on her. The car door opened, and a stranger walked towards her, drenched in the rain. Zainab looked at him with fear and surprise. Who was this? And why had he come to her on this wet night? The rain had intensified. Water was dripping from the broken shed of the bus stop. Zainab was sitting with her brother wrapped in a chador, when the steps of the stranger approached. He was a tall, strong man wearing a dark jacket, about 25 or 26 years old. There was a strange seriousness and a slight softness in his eyes. He stopped in front of Zainab and said slowly, "What are you doing here in the rain?" Zainab said in a trembling voice, We don't have anyone. We have been thrown out of the house." The stranger glanced at Kashif's pale face, then took a deep breath and said, "Come, sit in my car. It's cold here, the child will get sick." Zainab stepped back. I don't know you." The man smiled softly. "My name is Horace, and your mother was my teacher." Zainab was shocked to hear this. "My mother, your teacher?" Horace nodded. "Yes, your mother taught me when I was in school. She was like a mother to me. When she passed away, I was out of the country. And seeing you here like this today, I can't ignore you." Tears filled Zainab's eyes. "We have been wronged so much. Our parents' relatives took everything they had, and then the one who supported them also threw them out." Horace extended his hand. Come with me. I won't let you and your brother live on the road anymore. Zainab hesitantly held his hand. As soon as they got into the car, a warm breeze blew in, as if someone had given her a little comfort in this cold, merciless night. Horace drove the car, but there were deep lines of thought on his face. He knew that Zainab needed more than just a roof, but a shade that would protect her from all suffering. But Zainab didn't know that Horace's house wouldn't be so easy either. There were people there who wouldn't be able to tolerate Zainab, and one person who, upon seeing her, was determined to turn her life into another hell. When the car stopped in front of a large, old-fashioned, magnificent house, Zainab looked at it in surprise. The tall walls, the heavy wooden gate, and the large lights installed on both sides of the gate were sparkling in the raindrops. Horace stopped the car and said softly, "This is my house. Don't worry, you and Kashif are safe here." Zainab nodded slowly, but there was a slight panic in her heart. As soon as the gate opened, a servant moved towards the car, but behind him a thin woman, who must have been about 50 years old, shouted in a loud voice, "Horace! Who is this?" It was Horace's Aunt Sugra, who was like the real owner of the house. There was hardness in her eyes and pride on her face. Horace replied briefly, "This is Zainab, the daughter of my old teacher. And this is her brother. From today they will both live here." Aunt Sugra's face turned pale and disapproving. "We are not running an orphanage. Strangers cannot come and live here," Horace said firmly. "Auntie, I have made this decision." Zainab stood silently, holding Kashif to her chest, shivering in her clothes soaked in the rain. As soon as she entered, the maid showed Zainab a small room, which was at the back of the house. There were old damp stains on the walls, light drops dripping from the ceiling, and a broken chair placed in the corner. But for Zainab, this was no less than a palace, because at least here she was protected from the rain and cold. At night, when Zainab was lullabying Kashif, the door suddenly opened. A young man came in, with a strange sparkle in his eyes and a mocking smile on his lips. "So you are the orphan girl my brother brought," he said. Zainab remained silent. He stepped forward and said, "I am Fahad, Horace's half-brother. And remember, this house is mine. You will not be able to live here in peace even for a day." Zainab was startled and held her brother tighter. Fahad came closer and whispered, "If you want to live here, you will have to obey my orders. Otherwise, you will both be on the road by morning." Saying this, he laughed and left the room. Zainab's tears started falling on the pillow. She placed her hand on Kashif's head and said to herself, "No matter how difficult it is, I will not lose this battle." But she did not know that Fahad's intentions were not just threats. He was about to start a game that would push Zainab's life into another dark night. The next morning, the faint sunlight was coming in through the flickering window of Zainab's room. Kashif was still sleeping, and Zainab was slowly washing clothes. Horace had gone out of town on some work, and the entire atmosphere of the house was occupied by Fahad and Aunt Sugra. Around noon, Fahad stood at the door of the room. His eyes were strange, as if a new game was about to begin. "Zainab, Aunt's guest is coming. The cook has said that there is one dish missing from the meal. You go to the market and bring this thing." Zainab said hesitantly, I don't know the market, and I can't leave Kashif alone." A mocking smile spread across Fahad's lips. "The maid will look after Kashif. You have to go or else." He left the sentence unfinished, threatening, but Zainab understood that his refusal meant another storm. Zainab left Kashif with the maid and went to the market. The streets of the market were full of people, but she felt a strange fear in her heart. When she returned with her belongings in a hurry, her footsteps stopped at the gate of the house. The maid was standing outside, trembling. "Bibi, I didn't do anything. I just went to the kitchen, and when I came back, Kashif wasn't in the room." Zainab's heart started pounding. "What do you mean? Where is my brother?" She ran like crazy to every corner of the house, the courtyard, the kitchen, the storeroom, but Kashif was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, Fahad slowly came down the stairs, Kashif's small toy in his hand. "What are you looking for?" she said, smiling. Zainab said in a trembling voice. "Where did you take my brother?" Fahad came closer to her and threw the toy at her feet and said, "Just understand that if you want to stay here, you will have to obey everything I say. Otherwise, next time you will not even see your brother's face." Zainab's breath stopped. Tears flowed from her eyes. She folded her hands and said, "Please, don't say anything to my brother. I will agree to everything, just don't harm him." Fahad bowed his head and whispered, "That's the wisdom. For now, your brother is safe." He turned and went upstairs, and a few moments later, the maid was seen coming down with Kashif in her arms. Zainab immediately hugged her brother to her chest, as if she wanted to protect him from all the evil in the world. But a fear had settled in her heart. Fahad could go to any extent now. It was evening. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and lightning was crackling in the distance. The atmosphere in the house was unusually quiet, like the silence before a storm. Horace was still out of town, and in that silence, Fahad's presence weighed heavily on Zainab's heart like a shadow. Zainab was sitting in a corner of the courtyard, holding Kashif in her lap. Light raindrops were falling on the floor of the courtyard. Kashif was half asleep, his tiny hand clutching Zainab's clothes in his fist, as if he trusted no one but his sister. Suddenly, the sound of Fahad's shoes was heard in the courtyard. Zainab's heart beat fast. She sat up straight, but Fahad slowly approached her. He had a file in his hand, and a triumphant smile on his face. "Zainab, do you know I have tolerated you and your brother here until now?" Zainab remained silent, her eyes lowered. Fahad leaned closer to her. "This is about to reach its limit. But there is a way that you and your brother can be safe." Zainab said in shock. "What?" Fahad placed the file in front of her. "These are the papers, sign them. After this, you and your brother will be at my mercy. No one will be able to evict you." Zainab opened the file and her heart trembled as she read it. These papers were to transfer part of Horace's property to Fahad, and his signature was required as a witness. I cannot sign false papers." The smile on Fahad's face disappeared. "Think Zainab. Or this paper. Or you two on the road tonight. And this time I will not bring your brother back." Zainab started to choke. She looked at Kashif, who was asleep, unaware. Everything flashed through her mind in an instant. The days spent on the road, the hunger, the cold, and the night when Kashif was close to death. She said softly, "If I sign, then, you won't tell us anything?" Fahad smiled and said, "I swear, I won't tell you anything." Zainab held the pen with a trembling hand. Tears were flowing from her eyes, but her hand had turned to stone. She signed the papers, but a strange weight settled in her heart, as if she had sold herself. Fahad picked up the papers and said with a laugh, "You're a sensible girl. Just keep going like this." He stopped as he was leaving and said, "By the way, remember one thing. If Horace finds out about this, I will blame everything on your brother." The sound of Fahad's footsteps faded away, but Zainab's heart did not stop beating. She held Kashif to her chest and looked up at the sky, and said to herself, "Oh God, what have I done?" That night she couldn't sleep. Every moment she felt as if someone was screaming inside her. Kashif slept peacefully in her lap, but Zainab knew that this peace wouldn't last long. The next morning when Horace returned, there was joy in her eyes, but Zainab's face was yellow and there were dark circles around her eyes. Horace asked, "Zainab, is everything okay?" Zainab smiled and nodded yes. But she knew in her heart that everything was not okay, but rather everything was heading towards ruin. And Fahad? He was standing in the corner of the room, smiling as if the time for the next strike was near. After Horace's return, the atmosphere in the house had apparently returned to normal, but Zainab's heart was still filled with fear. She knew that Fahad was happy with his victory, and this silence was just the calm before a new storm. That day, Horace was sitting in his room looking at some files when he suddenly saw a paper that was different from the rest of the files. It did not have his signature on it, but Zainab's signature was clearly written below. In this paper, a part of the property was being transferred to Fahad's name. A frown appeared on Horace's forehead. What is this? Why did Zainab sign? At that moment, Fahad entered the room. He saw the paper in Horace's hand, and for a moment his face hardened, but then he immediately smiled and said, "Oh, it was just a draft made at the behest of his aunt. Zainab signed it by mistake. It was not actually a final paper." Horace looked at Fahad with a deep gaze. "By mistake? Or did someone force you?" Fahad laughed and said, "You think too much, brother," and quickly left the room with the paper. Doubt settled in Horace's heart. He decided that he would talk to Zainab himself. At night, when everyone was asleep, Horace slowly approached Zainab's room. There was a sound of soft sobbing from inside. He knocked on the door hesitantly. "Zainab, it's me, open the door." Zainab opened the door, her face wet with tears. Horace said softly, "Tell me the truth, what were those papers?" Zainab looked into his eyes for a moment, then looked away. "Nothing, it was just a mistake." Horace placed his hand on her shoulder. "Zainab, if someone is forcing you, tell me. I will never let you or Kashif come to harm." Zainab wanted to tell the truth, but fear for Kashif's safety remained on her lips. "No, Horace brother. Everything is fine." Horace felt that something was hidden in his eyes. He knew that the matter was serious. The next day, Horace secretly said to a servant in the house, "Keep an eye on Fahad and tell me everything." In the evening, that servant came running and said, "Sir, after you left, Fahad often comes to this orphan girl's room, and yesterday I heard him threatening that if she did not obey him, he would make Kashif disappear somewhere." Hearing this, a fire of anger flared up inside Horace. He decided that tonight he would openly ask Zainab everything, no matter what she hid. But that night something happened that changed Horace's plan. Because Kashif suddenly disappeared. Zainab's room was empty, the window was open, and outside, raindrops were falling on the ground. The rain had picked up. Gusts of wind were coming in through the window. When Zainab entered the room, her heart stopped for a moment. Kashif's bed was empty. The blanket was lying on the floor, and the window was wide open. "Kashif!" Her voice was trembling with fear. She ran out into the yard, then searched the kitchen, the storeroom, and even the back of the house. But Kashif was nowhere to be found. The ground gave way from under Zainab's feet. She ran like a madman toward the gate, but the guard stopped her and said, "Bibi, no one has come out yet." At that moment, Horace was coming down the stairs. Seeing Zainab's condition, he immediately ran towards her. "Zainab, what happened?" Zainab's tears were not stopping. "Ahmed Bhai, Kashif. I can't find Kashif." Hearing this, Horace's face turned pale. Without wasting time, he began to order the servants. "Check every room in the house. Garage, store, look at everything." A few minutes later, a servant came running and said in a trembling voice, "Sir, Kashif. Fahad is in Sahib's room." Zainab and Horace immediately ran to Fahad's room. The door was closed. Horace knocked loudly, but there was no response. Then he got angry and opened the door with a bang. Inside the room, Fahad was sitting on a chair, and Kashif was sleeping on his bed. Fahad had a small toy in his hand, which he was playing with. "What is happening?" Horace's voice was thunderous. Fahad shrugged his shoulders and said, "That's it. The child was crying alone, I brought it." Zainab stepped forward and immediately picked Kashif up in her arms. Her hands were shaking, fear was clearly visible in her eyes. Horace looked into Fahad's eyes and said, "I know what you are doing. If you bother Zainab or Kashif again, then you will have no place in this house." Fahad laughed, but there was poison in that laugh. "Brother, you make decisions very quickly. Remember, this house is not yours alone. And there are some truths that will shake you. Horace said in a stern tone. I will take account of your every dirty move. Zainab stood silently, hugging Kashif to her chest. But her heart knew that Fahad's threat was not insignificant. And this war was not over yet. That night, Horace decided that he would expose Fahad's true face at any cost. But Fahad was not going to sit still either. And the next blow was going to be more dangerous than the first. It was morning, sunlight streaming in through the small windows. Zainab was quietly washing dishes in the kitchen, while Kashif was playing with a broken toy nearby. After the previous night, she had thought she would stay away from Fahad's trap, but she had no idea that Fahad had already prepared a new one. Fahad was sitting alone in his room, a dangerous smile on his face. He took out his mobile and dialed a number. Yes, that girl. You just come to the gate this afternoon. I'll take care of the rest. Around noon, Fahad came into the courtyard and said in a deliberately loud voice. Zainab, Auntie has said to give this parcel to a man in the market. You will find him outside the gate. Zainab saw the parcel, a small box heavy. What is this? Fahad smiled and said, It's just Auntie's stuff, you give it to her, don't ask too many questions. Zainab hesitated, but after hearing Fahad's pressure and hearing her aunt's name, she picked up the parcel. Taking Kashif with her, she reached the gate, where a stranger was standing. He smiled, took the parcel and left immediately. When Zainab returned, Fahad stood in the courtyard and shouted loudly in front of everyone. Look at this. I trusted this girl, and she gave the valuables of the house to a stranger. Auntie Sugra came immediately. What's going on? Fahad said dramatically. Auntie, these were the jewels of our house, which Zainab herself gave to this man. I saw it with my own eyes. Zainab's face turned white. This is a lie. You said it was Auntie's stuff. Auntie snapped angrily. Shut up. First you stole the money, now the jewelry. That's it, leave this house today. Horace heard the noise and came inside. What's going on? Fahad immediately approached him. Brother, I know you believe in this girl, but today I saw it with my own eyes. She was giving our jewelry to a stranger. Horace looked at Zainab. Zainab, tell the truth, what was it? Tears welled up in Zainab's eyes. I didn't do anything, Ahmed brother. At my request. Horace asked in surprise. Zainab said crying. Fahad said it was Auntie's stuff. I just delivered it. Silence fell in the room. Horace's eyes started moving between Fahad and Zainab. For a moment, a shadow of doubt entered his heart, but he knew that the matter was deep. Enough is enough, Horace said sternly. From tomorrow, cameras will be installed in the house, so that the truth will come out in front of everyone. Fahad smiled and said, Of course, brother, of course. But there was another conspiracy hidden in his smile, because he knew that the cameras could also become part of his game. The next day, new cameras were installed everywhere in the house. Horace specifically instructed that there be cameras in the courtyard, the kitchen, the hallway, and even by the gate. His purpose was clear. He wanted Fahad to record everything if he made any move. Zainab felt that maybe now she would be able to live a little more peacefully. But there was a different glint in Fahad's eyes. He knew that cameras meant everything with evidence. And that evidence he could turn against Zainab. That night, when everyone was asleep, Fahad quietly left his room. He went straight to the storeroom, where the house's valuable utensils and some jewelry were kept. He took out a small gold bracelet from there and gently brought it into Zainab's room and placed it under her bed. Then he took out his mobile and hacked into the camera system and edited the footage from the previous hour. The kind of footage that made it look like Zainab was going to the storeroom at night and hiding something. The next morning, Fahad shouted in front of everyone. Look, I saw the footage from last night. This girl went to the storeroom at night and took something and hid it in her room. Aunt Sugra and the rest of the family gathered. Fahad opened the laptop and showed everyone the edited footage. The camera image was clear. Zainab was going to the storeroom in the dark of the night. Zainab's breath caught. This is a lie. I was in the room with my brother all night, Fahad said with a venomous smile. So what does this footage say? And look at this. He took out a gold bracelet from under Zainab's bed in front of everyone. Aunt Sugra's face turned red with anger. Is there any doubt left now? Horace stood silently watching everyone. There was a stern look on his face, but confusion was clearly visible in his eyes. Zainab, I think you're innocent, but all this footage, this bracelet, I don't understand. Tears started flowing from Zainab's eyes. Ahmed Bhai, I didn't do anything. This is all Fahad's trick. Fahad laughed and said, then prove it. Zainab fell silent. She knew that no one would believe her without proof. That night, she kept thinking as she held her brother close to her chest. If she remained silent, Fahad would throw her out of this house one day, and if she spoke, no one would believe her. But she had no idea that the next day an event was going to happen that would change everything. And Fahad's biggest trick could backfire. It was morning. The freshness of the rain could be felt in the courtyard of the house, but the atmosphere inside the house was still heavy. The incident of the previous night was like a chain for Zainab. False accusations, camera footage, and everyone's suspicious eyes. Zainab had spent the whole night awake, holding Kashif to her chest. A single question was circulating in her heart. How can I clear my name? Meanwhile, Horace got up early in the morning and started talking to the guard standing at the gate. The guard said slowly, Sir, something strange happened last night. I didn't see the footage shown in the cameras live. The original footage was something else. Horace said in shock. The original footage? Where is it? The guard said slowly. Sir, a backup of the main system is also automatically saved in the old computer in the storeroom. Maybe it contains the original recording. Horace immediately went to the storeroom and turned on the old computer. After searching for some time, he opened the file, and as soon as the video started playing, his eyes widened in surprise. The original footage clearly showed Fahad going to the storeroom at night, and carrying something in his hand, heading towards Zainab's room. Zainab's arrival at this place was a distant memory. She had not even left her room. A fire of anger flared in Horace's heart. He came straight to the hall, where Aunt Sugra, Fahad, and a few servants were present. Everyone come here. Horace's voice was thunderous. Everyone gathered. Horace opened the laptop and played the original footage in front of everyone. This is the truth. And this is your hero Fahad, who plays his dirty games by accusing others. Aunt Sugra's face went pale. The servants looked at each other in surprise. Fahad remained silent for a moment, then said with a fake smile, Brother, this is probably an idiot. Shut up, Horace said angrily. If you say even one word now, I will throw you out of this house right now. Zainab's tears this time were not of helplessness. These were tears of relief. For the first time, someone had spoken the truth for her in front of everyone. But Zainab knew that Fahad was not going to give up so easily. This war was not over yet. But now his real dangerous intentions would begin. After the original footage was released to everyone, a strange silence fell over the house. Fahad was apparently silent, but the fire of anger was clearly visible in his eyes. He knew that Horace had destroyed his honor in front of everyone, and now he wanted only one thing, revenge. Zainab was sitting in her room with Kashif that day. For the first time, a little peace had come to her heart, but she did not know that this peace was the last moment before the storm that was coming. In the evening, Horace left the house for an important meeting. Aunt Sugra was in her room, and the servants were also busy with their own work. Fahad saw the opportunity and made a call on his mobile. Yes. Is everyone ready? Just be on time. There should be no doubt. As darkness began to fall, Fahad quietly left the back gate. About half an hour later, two strange men approached the house on bikes. Fahad had already paid the guard at the gate, so he didn't ask any questions. The two men came straight to the back window near Zainab's room, where the glass was already slightly loose. One opened the window and peered in. Zainab was sitting with her brother. Suddenly one said, "Hurry up, time is short." The other rushed in, and in the blink of an eye, snatched Kashif from Zainab's lap. "Leave him alone." Zainab screamed, and started to struggle with the two men. But one of them put a cloth over her face, causing her to fall weakly to the ground. Kashif's crying echoed, and Zainab, in her semi-conscious state, could only see that the two men took Kashif and went out the window. When Zainab regained consciousness, the room was dark, and her lap was empty. "Kashif!" Her voice trembled with fear and helplessness. She ran into the courtyard, but there was no one in the house. Aunt Sugra's room was locked, the servants were nowhere to be seen, and Horace had not yet returned. Zainab's heart beat faster. She picked up the phone with trembling hands and called Horace. "Ahmed Bhai. Kashif." Someone took Kashif. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few moments. Then Horace's thunderous voice came. "I'm coming. Close the doors, don't go out." But Zainab had no idea that this was all Fahad's plan. And this time he had come not just to scare Kashif, but to take him away from her forever. Zainab's trembling voice rang in Horace's ears, and he was driving at full speed. The rain was pouring outside, but at that moment Horace had only one thing on his mind. Nothing should happen to Kashif. As soon as he reached home, he stopped the car in the middle of the gate and ran inside. Zainab was standing in the courtyard trembling. Her eyes filled with fear and her face filled with tears. "Where did they go?" Horace asked quickly. "There were two men. Came in through the back window. Took Kashif." Zainab's voice was breaking. Horace grabbed the guard and shook him. "Why did you let them go?" The guard lowered his eyes. "Sir, Fahad Sahib said that these were his friends." Hearing this, anger flashed in Horace's eyes. "Where is Fahad?" At that moment, Fahad was seen coming down the stairs, his face feigning surprise and innocence. "What happened, brother? Why is there so much noise?" Horace rushed towards him. "Your game is over, Fahad. You have kidnapped Kashif." Fahad laughed. "Wow, brother. Someone should learn from you to make accusations. If it is my fault, where is the proof?" Horace said in a stern tone. "There will be proof and your ruin too." Then he turned to Zainab. "I will find them." He immediately called his friend Farouk, who is one of the most influential people in the city. Farouk promised that he would inform all the CCTV cameras and police posts in the city through his contacts. Farouk's call came back in no time. "Horace, two suspicious people have gone from your home area towards an old factory. Look there." Horace did not waste a moment. He got into the car and drove towards the deserted factory at full speed. The road was slippery due to the rain, but it was all meaningless to him. When he reached the factory, he pushed open the door. It was dark inside, except for a small light burning in one corner. He moved forward slowly, and suddenly he heard Kashif's faint cry. As he approached the light, he saw that Kashif was tied to an old chair, and the two strangers were sitting nearby, talking. Horace rushed towards them angrily, knocked one of them to the ground and grabbed the stick from the other's hand. "If you even touch my brother, I will break a bone and a rib." He immediately freed Kashif and hugged him to his chest. Kashif's weak voice came out. "Ahmed Bhai." But as he started to walk out, Fahad was standing at the door, drenched in the rain, and a poisonous smile on his lips. "You are very fast, but the game is not over yet." Standing at the factory gate, Fahad's eyes held a strange horror. The rain was falling on his face, but the same poisonous smile remained on his lips. Horace held Kashif in one arm and tried to push Fahad out with the other hand, but Fahad beckoned from behind. And suddenly 3 more men came out of another room in the factory, iron bars and sticks in their hands. "Today you two, and this orphan girl, all 3 of you will not leave here alive," Fahad roared. Horace made Kashif sit in a safe place in a corner and prepared to fight. When the first man stepped forward, Horace grabbed his hand and slammed him against the wall. The second came from behind, but Horace blocked his stick and knocked him to the ground. At that moment, Fahad saw the opportunity and took out his pistol and headed straight for Zainab, who was standing stone cold with fear. "Haris, if you take even one step forward, this is your precious guest." He signaled to shoot. Zainab's heart beat faster, but her eyes were on Haris as if she were saying, "Don't stop for me, save Kashif." Suddenly, a bright light came inside the factory with a flash of lightning. Police cars had stopped at the gate. Farouk had informed the police in time and brought them here. As soon as the police entered, Fahad panicked and pushed Zainab away and tried to run away, but two officers were already at the gate. "Stop, Fahad. The game is over now," an officer shouted. Fahad was subdued and handcuffed. The other three men were also arrested by the police. Zainab was sitting on the ground, tears flowing from her eyes along with the rainwater. Kashif came crying into her lap. "Everything is fine now. I am here, right?" Zainab said, hugging her to her chest, but there was still fear in her heart that what if Fahad tried to take revenge even after the police? Haris came closer to her, placed his hand on Zainab's shoulder and said in a strong tone, "As long as I am alive, no one can touch you too." But Zainab did not know that Fahad had a secret that if revealed, then this peace would not last long. The police took Fahad and his companions away, and a deep peace settled over the house. Zainab slept peacefully at night after many days. Kashif also slept peacefully in his sister's arms. But this peace did not last long. 3 days later, Haris was sitting in the office when he received a call. On the other end was a familiar but dangerous voice. "Fahad's brother. Did you think I would rot in jail? You have forgotten that money and connections change everything here." Haris's blood boiled. "Fahad, your place is in jail. If you try to get close to Zainab or Kashif." Fahad laughed and interrupted. "You are threatening and I am telling the truth. Do you even know who your beloved Zainab is?" Haris asked confused. "What do you mean?" There was venom in Fahad's voice. "Zainab's father was a business partner with your father, and he took a large sum of money. Yes, a very large sum of money. In your father's name, which was never returned. Your family still believes that that money was the cause of your father's ruin." Haris was silent for a few moments. Fahad continued his attack. "So Zainab's father destroyed your father, and today you are raising his daughter in your house. Imagine what will happen if Aunt Sugra and the rest of the family find out about this." The phone went off. Haris's hands were soaked with sweat. He didn't know if this was the truth or Fahad's lie, but one thing was clear. If this news spread in the house, it would be impossible for Zainab to live. That same evening, loud voices were coming from Aunt Sugra's room. "I have heard everything. This girl is the daughter of an enemy of our family." Aunt Sugra was shouting angrily. Zainab stood trembling at the door. There was fear in her eyes and a question in her heart. Is all this true? Is my past my greatest punishment? Haris came out of the room, confusion in his eyes and a stern look on his face. "Zainab, we need to talk." Zainab looked at him with a pounding heart. At that moment, she felt that perhaps even her greatest support was about to lose faith in her. It was nighttime. The sky was overcast, and a strange tension was spreading inside the house. Zainab was sitting in the corner of the courtyard. Kashif was sleeping in her lap, but her heart was as restless as a storm. Haris had not spoken to her all day. Finally, Haris left the room and slowly approached Zainab and said, "Zainab, I need to know the truth about your past. Is it true that your father harmed my father?" Zainab's face turned pale. She lowered her eyes, then said slowly, "All I know is that my parents were honest. My father had a business with your father, but it all ended in an accident. My father never cheated, but he was accused and couldn't wash it off. And a few days later, they both died in a car accident." Tears welled up in Zainab's eyes. "I endured all this as a child, and now I'm hearing the same accusation again." Haris watched her silently. A wall of doubt formed in his heart for a moment, but then he remembered all the days when Zainab, helpless, endured every humiliation to protect her brother, but never made a mistake. At that moment there was a noise at the gate. The police came in and with them was Fahad, handcuffed. An officer said, "We know the truth." Fahad himself admitted that he spread false rumors against your father's business, to create a rift between your father and Zainab's father. His aim was to break up the two families, so that he could take over the business alone. Zainab was shocked, and the tension on Horace's face broke. He took a deep breath and stood directly in front of Zainab. "Zainab, forgive me. You and Kashif are my home. From today on, no accusations will be made against you, and every enemy of yours will be my enemy." Tears welled up in Zainab's eyes, but this time they were tears of peace and gratitude. Kashif curled up in his sleep and snuggled even closer to his sister. Fahad was taken away by the police. Aunt Sugra quietly went to her room, and Horace told Zainab, "Now your story will not end in sorrow and fear, but will begin with a new life." Zainab thanked him in her heart. After years of torment, she and Kashif had finally found a safe haven.